The ultimate corporate power play unfolds in Conglomerate Wars Part 6. When $30 million in cryptocurrency vanishes, Marcus Hammond of Hammond Media uncovers a plot of betrayal. His son's collusion with rival Julian Clarion. Meanwhile, Isabelle Dustin learns her family's empire is also being dismantled by Clarion. Conglomerate Wars Part 6, The Fracture, Chapter 1, Leverage and Liability. The emergency board meeting at Hammond Media took place in a windowless conference room 3 floors below ground level. Marcus Hammond had learned long ago that the most dangerous conversations required the most secure locations. "Explain to me," Marcus said, his voice carrying the dangerous calm of a predator assessing its prey. "How $30 million in cryptocurrency disappeared from our reserves in under 6 minutes." The CFO, a nervous man named Peterson, who'd been with Hammond Industries for 15 years, pulled up charts on the display screen. "The transaction routing suggests it originated from our Los Angeles office, but the authentication codes were legitimate. Someone with executive-level access initiated the transfer." Executive-level access. Marcus's eyes swept the room, landing on each of the 6 people present. That's 8 people in this company. 7 of them are in this room right now. His daughter Natasha, freshly returned from what she'd claimed was a strategic trip to San Francisco, met his gaze without flinching. "And the 8th? Your brother," Marcus said, "who's been in New York all week, supposedly finalizing the merger terms with Clarion Computing." The merger. The word tasted bitter in Marcus's mouth. 6 months ago, he'd have sooner burned Hammond Industries to the ground than partner with Julian Clarion, the man who'd stolen the woman Marcus had once loved. But business, as always, trumped personal grievances. The cryptocurrency market was becoming increasingly regulated, and Clarion's cloud computing infrastructure provided the perfect, legitimate backbone for Hammond's blockchain operations. Except now, someone was bleeding them dry from the inside. "I want a full forensic audit," Marcus ordered. "Every transaction, every access point, every keystroke logged in the past 6 months. And someone get Christopher on the phone. Now." As the meeting dissolved into frantic activity, Natasha lingered behind. She'd changed since her affair with Devon Scholes had imploded. Harder edges, sharper instincts. Less of the idealistic daughter who'd once believed in ethical capitalism and corporate responsibility. "It wasn't Christopher," she said quietly. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You seem certain." "Because I know who it was." She pulled out her phone, displaying a series of screenshots. "Devon Scholes. He's been skimming cryptocurrency from multiple sources, not just us. He's building a war chest." "For what purpose?" "A hostile takeover of his own family's company." Natasha's smile was cold. "Apparently, I wasn't the only one he was playing. Devon's been systematically undermining his mother's position at Scholes Security. He wants control of their Metaverse platform, and he needs capital to buy out the minority shareholders." Marcus studied his daughter, recognizing the transformation. She'd gone to San Francisco seeking revenge, and she'd found something more valuable: intelligence. "And you know this how?" "Because he tried to recruit me, offered me 20% of Scholes Security if I'd help him convince you to back his takeover." She pocketed her phone. "I told him I'd think about it, which bought me enough time to document everything." Smart. Marcus felt a surge of pride. But if Devon has the capability to breach our systems, that means Scholes Security has vulnerabilities in their own infrastructure. Vulnerabilities we could exploit, or we could expose him, Natasha countered. "Give Catherine Scholes the evidence she needs to remove her son from the company entirely. That might earn us some goodwill we can leverage." Marcus considered this. Catherine Scholes was formidable, brilliant, ruthless, and currently embroiled in a very public battle with the Dustin family over Metaverse patent rights, a battle that was draining resources from both San Francisco and New York. No, he decided. We hold the information. Use it only if we need to. Right now, I want to know what the Clarions are planning. This merger has been too easy. Julian doesn't do anything without multiple contingencies. As if summoned by the mention of his name, Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from Julian Clarion. We need to talk, not about the merger. It's about Isabelle. Marcus felt his blood run cold. Chapter 2. Ghost Protocol, 3,000 miles away. In the Dustin family's Manhattan headquarters, Isabelle Dustin sat across from her eldest son, Thomas, reviewing damage control strategies for their latest crisis. The SEC investigation is expanding, Thomas said, his voice tight with controlled frustration. They're now looking into not just the shipping irregularities, but also our media acquisitions from the past 3 years. Someone's feeding them information. Isabelle, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, didn't react visibly. She built Dustin Enterprises from her father's modest shipping company into a multimedia empire, and she'd done it by never showing weakness. The Hammonds. That would be the obvious conclusion, except the leak is coming from inside our own organization. Thomas pulled up an internal memo on his tablet. This was sent from an anonymous account, but the metadata traces back to our cloud servers, Clarion's cloud servers, specifically.
I love making these videos for you. If you liked this story, then please like, subscribe to my channel, and switch on the notifications for more entertaining stories. Please also leave a comment for any story suggestions.
Isabelle's expression finally shifted, a hairline fracture in her composure. Julian. The name hung between them, weighted with decades of complicated history. Isabelle and Julian Clarion had been engaged once, before she'd met the man who would become her late husband. When that relationship ended, Julian had married her best friend in what Isabelle always believed was an act of calculated revenge. Why would Clarion sabotage his own infrastructure? Thomas asked. If word gets out that his cloud systems are being used to leak confidential information, it destroys his entire business model. Unless he doesn't care about Clarion computing anymore, Isabelle said slowly, pieces clicking into place. When did he approach us about the media partnership? 6 months ago, right after Hammond Industries announced their blockchain expansion. And when did we start migrating our data to Clarion servers? Thomas's eyes widened. 8 months ago, before he even approached us officially. He swore under his breath. He's been planning this from the beginning. But planning what? What does he gain from taking down both our companies? Isabelle stood, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Snow was beginning to fall, dusting the trees in white. Julian doesn't think in terms of single victories. He thinks in dynasties. What if this isn't about destroying our companies, but about forcing consolidation? A merger? A hostile takeover disguised as salvation. He lets us bleed, lets the Hammonds scramble, then positions himself as the only solution. We'll be so desperate for stability that we'll accept terms we'd never otherwise consider. Thomas absorbed this, his mind racing through implications. That's insane. The capital required to absorb both Hammond Industries and Dustin Enterprises is exactly what you'd have if you controlled the entire cryptocurrency market and the cloud infrastructure supporting it, Isabelle finished. Add in our media holdings and shipping logistics, and Julian would control the entire information and supply chain for digital commerce. We need to warn Hammond. Marcus already knows, Isabelle said. He's many things, but he's not stupid. The question is whether he'll work with us or try to make his own deal with Julian first. Her phone rang, an unknown number with a New York area code. Isabelle almost didn't answer, but something made her accept the call. Mrs. Dustin. The voice was female, young, unfamiliar. My name is Rachel Scholes. I'm Catherine Scholes' daughter. I believe we have a common enemy. Chapter 3. The Scholes Gambit. Rachel Scholes had always been the invisible member of her family, overshadowed by her charismatic brother Devin and her domineering mother, Catherine. While they fought over Shoal's security and Metaverse dominance, Rachel had quietly built her own power base in the company's research and development division. She'd also been systematically documenting every illegal, unethical, or questionable decision her family had made for the past 5 years. "I'm listening," Isabelle said, putting the call on speaker so Thomas could hear. "My mother is planning something catastrophic," Rachel said without preamble. "She's developed a backdoor into every Metaverse platform currently on the market, a cybersecurity vulnerability disguised as a security feature. If activated, she could crash the entire virtual economy. Trillions of dollars in assets, gone in seconds." Thomas leaned forward. "Why are you telling us this?" "Because my brother Devin is planning to activate it. He thinks he can use it as leverage to force Mother out of the company. He doesn't understand that she built in safeguards. If Devin triggers the back door, it'll look like Shoal's security was responsible for the crash. Every client we have will sue us into oblivion. The company will be destroyed." "And you care about that?" Isabelle asked, skeptical. "I care about the 20,000 employees who'll lose their jobs. I care about the legitimate technology we've developed that will be lost. And yes, I care about preventing my family from committing what amounts to economic terrorism." Rachel's voice was steady, determined. "I've been trying to reach Marcus Hammond because his cryptocurrency operations are the most vulnerable, but he won't take my calls. You're my second choice." "Flattering," Isabelle said dryly. "What do you want from us? An alliance. You help me expose what Devin and Catherine are planning before they can execute it. In return, I give you access to Shoal Security's actual Metaverse platform. No backdoors, no vulnerabilities. Dustin Media can be the first major publisher in a truly secure virtual environment." It was a tempting offer, but Isabelle hadn't survived decades in cutthroat business by accepting deals that sounded too good to be true. "And what do you get out of this arrangement?" "Control of Shoal's security after Mother and Devin are forced out. I'm the only family member without blood on their hands. The board will have no choice but to elevate me to CEO if I'm the one who saved the company." Isabelle exchanged a glance with Thomas. It was a smart play, ruthless but principled. Exactly the kind of calculated risk Isabelle herself might have taken at Rachel's age. "How do we know you're telling the truth?" Thomas asked. "Because I'm about to send you proof. Check your secure server in exactly 60 seconds. Rachel paused. "And Mrs. Dustin, when you talk to Julian Clarion, and you will, ask him about Project Kronos. See if he's honest with you. That'll tell you everything you need to know about whether you can trust him." The call disconnected. 57 seconds later, Thomas's tablet pinged with an incoming file. He opened it, his expression growing increasingly grim as he read. "It's all here," he said. "Technical specifications for the backdoor, encrypted communications between Devin and Catherine, financial records showing how they've been shorting their own clients' Metaverse investments." He looked up at his mother. "If this goes public, Shoal's security is finished. Which means we need to decide very quickly whether we're interested in saving them or exploiting their collapse," Isabelle said. "What's Project Kronos?" Thomas searched the files, pulling up a heavily redacted document. "A joint venture between Clarion Computing and Hammond Industries, initiated 9 months ago, long before any public discussion of a merger. What's the project's purpose?" "It's encrypted. I'd need access to Clarion's servers to decode it." Thomas looked up sharply. "Or Hammond's." Isabelle made a decision. "Call Marcus Hammond. Tell him we need an emergency meeting. All parties. Tonight. All parties? Hammond, Clarion, us, and Rachel Scholes. Whatever's happening here is bigger than individual corporate warfare. If Julian's been planning this for 9 months, if Devin and Catherine are willing to crash the entire Metaverse economy, if someone's been leaking our information to the SEC." She trailed off. "The pieces still not quite fitting together. We're missing something. Something big." Chapter 4. Convergence. The meeting took place on neutral ground, a private room at the Carlyle Hotel in Manhattan, swept for electronic surveillance and with enough security to stage a small coup. Marcus Hammond arrived first, flanked by Natasha and Christopher, who'd been summoned back from his New York meetings with obvious reluctance. Julian Clarion came alone, which was either a power move or a vulnerability. At 63, he looked a decade younger, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that commanded any room he entered. Isabelle and Thomas Dustin arrived exactly on time, which Marcus interpreted as a tactical choice. Not desperate enough to be early, not arrogant enough to be late. Rachel Scholes was the last to arrive, young and nervous, but with steel in her spine that reminded Marcus of Natasha. "This is cozy," Julian said once everyone was seated. "The four families, almost biblical in its symmetry." "Cut the philosophical bullshit," Marcus said. "You sent me a message about Isabelle. Talk." Julian's gaze shifted to Isabelle with something that might have been regret. "I'm sorry to inform you that your younger son, David, has been embezzling from Dustin Enterprises for the past 2 years. Approximately $80 million, funneled through shell companies and cryptocurrency accounts. I know this because he's been using my cloud infrastructure to hide the transactions." The room went silent. Thomas looked like he'd been punched. Isabelle's expression revealed nothing, but Marcus saw her hand tighten on the armrest of her chair. "David?" Thomas finally said. "That's impossible. He's barely involved in the business. He runs the charitable foundation, which makes him the perfect person to move money without scrutiny," Julian said. He pushed a tablet across the table. "I've compiled all the evidence. Account numbers, transaction histories, communication logs. It's airtight. Why are you telling us this?" Isabelle asked, her voice dangerous. "Because David is planning to disappear. Tomorrow night, specifically. He's already moved himself and his family to a non-extradition country. Once he's gone, he'll start liquidating the remaining assets. By the time you realize what's happened, another 100 million will be gone." Marcus watched this exchange with growing suspicion. "You just happen to have detailed evidence of financial crimes being committed through your own infrastructure? That makes you an accessory." "Unless I'm the whistleblower," Julian countered. "Which is exactly what I intend to be. Clarion Computing has cooperated fully with federal authorities. We're immune from prosecution." "You bastard," Thomas said. "You set him up. You gave David the tools to steal from us, documented everything, and now you're using it as leverage." "Your brother made his own choices," Julian said coldly. "I simply provided the rope. Whether he hanged himself or climbed to freedom was entirely up to him." Natasha, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. "Project Kronos. What is it?" Julian's composure flickered for just a moment, so brief Marcus almost missed it. "Where did you hear that name?" "Answer the question," Marcus said. Julian studied them all, calculating. Then he smiled. And Marcus felt his blood run cold, because it was the smile of a man who'd already won. "Project Kronos is a complete financial ecosystem," Julian said. "Cryptocurrency, cloud storage, cybersecurity, media distribution, physical logistics. Everything needed to control the entire digital economy, from creation to consumption. I've been assembling the pieces for 3 years. Using all of us," Isabelle said. "Using your weaknesses," Julian corrected. "Marcus, your son Christopher has been feeding me intelligence on Hammond Industries in exchange for promises of a larger role in the merged company. Isabelle, your son David's embezzlement gave me leverage over Dustin Enterprises. Catherine Schall's Metaverse backdoor, which I helped her develop, by the way, gives me control over the entire virtual economy. Piece by piece. I've positioned myself to absorb all your companies, not through direct acquisition, but through orchestrated collapse." Christopher shot to his feet. "That's a lie. I never." "Sit down," Marcus said quietly. His son's guilty expression told him everything he needed to know. "We'll discuss your betrayal later." Rachel leaned forward. "You helped my mother develop the backdoor?" Who do you think suggested it to her in the first place? Julian said. Catherine is brilliant but paranoid. All I had to do was convince her that other companies were planning to infiltrate the metaverse. She did all the work herself. And Devon, Rachel asked. Your brother is a useful idiot, ambitious but short-sighted. Once he activates the backdoor, Shaw's security will be destroyed, and I'll be positioned as the only person who can restore the metaverse infrastructure. Julian spread his hands. I save the day. I absorb all your companies at fire sale prices. I control everything. The arrogance was stunning. Marcus felt a grudging respect even as he planned Julian's destruction. Except we're all in this room right now, Natasha said, which means you don't control everything, or you wouldn't have told us about David. You wouldn't have tipped your hand. Julian's smile faded. Very perceptive. You're right. There's one element I don't control. What element? Isabelle demanded. Your daughter, Julian said to Isabelle. Vanessa Dustin. She's been conducting her own investigation into all of our companies for the past 6 months. She has evidence that could bring down not just me, but all of us. Evidence of price fixing, market manipulation, bribery, fraud. She's planning to go public tomorrow morning. Once she does, it won't matter who controls what corporate structure because we'll all be in federal prison. Chapter 5. The Alliance. Marcus absorbed this new information, his mind racing through implications. He'd met Vanessa Dustin once, briefly, at a charity gala 3 years ago. She'd been passionate about journalism ethics and corporate transparency, everything her mother's empire stood against. Why would Vanessa destroy her own family? Thomas asked. Because she's idealistic and naive, Isabelle said bitterly. She thinks she's serving some greater good. She is, Rachel said quietly. We've all committed crimes. Maybe we deserve to face consequences. Speak for yourself, Marcus snapped. I'm not interested in falling on my sword for Julian Clarion's sins. Then we need to stop Vanessa, Julian said. Together, it's the only way any of us survive. You want us to silence a whistleblower? Natasha said incredulously. Even for you, that's a new low. I want us to negotiate with her, Julian corrected. Offer her something she wants more than our destruction. Vanessa is crusading against corporate corruption because she believes there's no accountability. What if we proved her wrong? Isabelle leaned back, understanding dawning. You want to offer her a sacrifice? Exactly. We give her someone to prosecute. Someone whose crimes are real and documented. Someone whose downfall will satisfy the public appetite for justice without destroying all our companies. And who did you have in mind for this role? Marcus asked. Though he already knew the answer, Julian's silence was answer enough. Catherine and Devon Scholes, Rachel said. You want to feed them to Vanessa. Let them take the fall for everything. They're planning economic terrorism, Julian said. Their crimes are real, their prosecution is justified, and their removal solves multiple problems simultaneously. You're insane, Thomas said. We're not going to coordinate a takedown of an entire family just to save our own skins. Aren't we? Julian challenged. Look around this table. Marcus, your son betrayed you. Isabelle, your son stole from you. Rachel, your entire family is toxic. We're all bleeding. We can either bleed out separately, or we can form a tourniquet and survive. Marcus hated that Julian was making sense. He looked at Natasha, who met his gaze with a complicated expression. She'd been where Rachel was, used by Devon, caught in family dysfunction, forced to choose between loyalty and survival. If we do this, Marcus said slowly, we do it my way. No one gets eliminated without due process. Catherine and Devon face real legal consequences, not manufactured charges, and we bring in federal authorities from the beginning. No cover-ups, no backroom deals. Agreed, Isabelle said. She looked at her son. Thomas, contact Vanessa. Tell her we want to meet. She won't trust us. She'll trust Rachel, Natasha said, looking at the younger woman. You're the only one in this room without blood on your hands. You're the one who tried to stop this. If you vouch for the agreement, Vanessa might listen. Rachel considered this, then nodded. I'll do it, but I want something in return. Of course you do, Julian said with dark amusement. When this is over, when Catherine and Devon are gone, I want complete independence for Shoals security. No mergers, no acquisitions, no Hammond or Clarion or Dustin control. We remain separate. Done, Marcus said, before anyone else could object. He respected the play. Then we have an agreement, Julian said. He stood, straightening his jacket. I'll prepare the evidence against Catherine and Devon. Marcus, your blockchain expertise will be needed to trace their financial crimes. Isabelle, your media contacts can control the narrative. And Rachel, you'll be our face, the family member who chose principle over loyalty. One more thing, Christopher spoke up, his voice quiet with shame. The intelligence I gave you about Hammond Industries, I want to undo it. Whatever I shared, I'll help you protect against it. Marcus looked at his son, seeing not the betrayal, but the attempt at redemption. We'll discuss it, but Christopher, you're out of the company. After this is resolved, you'll take a severance package and find somewhere else to apply your talents. Christopher nodded, accepting the sentence. As the meeting broke up, Isabelle lingered near Julian. Marcus couldn't hear their conversation, but he saw the decades of history and how they stood, close but not touching, intimate but guarded. Did you ever love me? Isabelle asked, just loud enough for Marcus to catch. Or was I always just a piece on your board? Julian was quiet for a long moment. I loved you enough to let you go when you chose someone else. Everything after that was compensation. 3 decades of corporate warfare. As compensation for a broken heart? I'm a petty man, Julian said. It's one of my few honest qualities. Isabelle laughed, surprising everyone in the room. It was bitter and sad and somehow fond all at once. You're gonna die alone and miserable, Julian, surrounded by money and power and absolutely nothing that matters. Probably, he agreed, but I'll die successful. That counts for something. Does it? She turned to leave, then paused. David is my son. However this ends, I want him protected. Prison, fine, but protected. I'll do what I can, Julian said. After they'd all left, Marcus and Natasha stood alone in the room. Do you trust any of them? Natasha asked. Not even a little, Marcus said. But right now, we don't need trust. We need mutual self-interest. And after? When Catherine and Devon are dealt with, and Vanessa is satisfied, and we've all saved our companies? Marcus smiled grimly. Then we go back to destroying each other. That's how this works, Tasha. Temporary alliances, permanent warfare. Sounds exhausting. It is, but it's also the only game in town. He headed for the door, then turned back. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. How you handled Devon, how you're handling all of this. You've become a player in your own right. Natasha felt an unexpected warmth at her father's approval. Thanks, Dad. Don't thank me yet. The hard part's still coming. Chapter 6, Exposures. Vanessa Dustin's apartment in Brooklyn was modest by Dustin family standards, but 2-bedroom in Park Slope, filled with books and journalism awards and the controlled chaos of someone who lived alone and liked it that way. When Rachel Scholes arrived, accompanied by Thomas Dustin, Vanessa answered the door with obvious suspicion. I'm not interested in whatever deal Mom is offering, she said without preamble. It's not from Mom, Thomas said. It's from all of us. Hammond, Clarion, Scholes, and Dustin. We want to work with you, not against you. Vanessa laughed sharply. Right. 4 corrupt conglomerates suddenly grew a conscience. Forgive me if I don't believe you. We haven't grown a conscience, Rachel said. We're offering you a trade. You have evidence of corporate crimes. We're offering you the architects of the worst ones. Complete access, full cooperation, everything you need to build an airtight case. In exchange for what? Burying evidence against the rest of you? In exchange for focusing your investigation where it'll do the most good, Thomas said. Vanessa, you're my sister. I know you think I'm complicit in everything Mom has done, and you're probably right about some of it. But I also know you became a journalist because you wanted to hold power accountable. This is your chance to actually do that. to take down people who've caused real harm, not just symbolic targets. Vanessa studied them both, clearly torn. Who are you offering me? Catherine and Devon Scholes, Rachel said. My mother and brother. They've developed a backdoor into the metaverse that could crash the entire virtual economy. They're planning to activate it within the next 48 hours. If you work with us, you'll have access to every piece of evidence, every communication, every crime they've committed. You'll be the journalist who exposed the biggest cybersecurity threat of the decade. And in return, you focus your investigation there, Thomas said. Not on Hammond's cryptocurrency operations, or Clarion's cloud infrastructure, or Dustin's media acquisitions. Catherine and Devon are the immediate threat. They're the story. Vanessa walked to her window, looking out at the Brooklyn street below. Snow was still falling, covering the neighborhood in white. You're asking me to choose between comprehensive justice and immediate impact. I'm asking you to be strategic, Rachel said. You publish everything you have right now. You'll create chaos, multiple investigations, years of legal battles, and maybe, some people see consequences. Or you can help us take down 2 people who are planning actual terrorism, guarantee their prosecution, and use that momentum to push for real corporate reform. Corporate reform, Vanessa repeated skeptically. From the people who've spent their lives avoiding it? From people who've been forced to confront their own vulnerability, Thomas corrected. Vanessa, Julian Clarion nearly destroyed all of us. He manipulated our families, exploited our weaknesses, orchestrated our downfalls. The only reason we survived is because we were forced to work together. That kind of experience, it changes you. Or at least it should. Vanessa turned back to face them. I want guarantees. Full testimony from everyone involved. No sealed records. No plea deals that let people walk away rich. And I want an exclusive. The entire story, told without interference. Done, Rachel said. And one more thing. Vanessa looked at her brother. I want you to testify against Mom. About the media acquisitions, the editorial interference, all of it. If I'm going to believe you're serious about change, you need to prove it. Thomas went pale. Vanessa, that's the price, she said firmly. You testify, or there's no deal. Marcus Hammond would have been proud of the play. Thomas stood there, caught between family loyalty and self-preservation, and finally nodded. Okay, I'll testify. Then we have an agreement, Vanessa said. She pulled out her phone, already shifting into journalist mode. I'll need to verify everything independently. I'll need sources beyond just you. And if I find evidence that you're lying to me or trying to manipulate the investigation, the deal is off and I publish everything. Understood, Rachel said. Over the next 6 hours, the 3 of them worked through the evidence. Rachel provided technical specifications for the Metaverse backdoor. Thomas offered financial records showing Catherine and Devon's manipulation of Scholes security stock. Vanessa made calls to her sources at the FBI and SEC, confirming that they'd be interested in the case. By dawn, they had the framework of a story that would dominate the news cycle for months. Tech titans plot Metaverse collapse. Scholes family plan to crash virtual economy. When does this go live? Rachel asked as they finalized details. Tomorrow morning, Vanessa said. I need tonight to verify the last few sources and write the piece. By this time tomorrow, Catherine and Devon will be in federal custody. They'll know it was me, Rachel said quietly. They'll never forgive me. No, Vanessa agreed. They won't. Are you ready for that? Rachel thought about all the years of being overlooked, dismissed, treated as less than by her own family. She thought about the employees who would lose their jobs if Devon activated the backdoor. The innocent people whose virtual assets would be destroyed. The chaos that would follow. I'm ready, she said. Chapter 7. The Fall. Catherine Scholes received the FBI warrant at 6 a.m., just as she was preparing for her morning meeting with Scholes Security's board of directors. Agents stormed into her Pacific Heights mansion with enough force to make a statement. This wasn't a request. It was a takedown. Devon was arrested simultaneously at the company's San Francisco headquarters, caught in the act of attempting to access the Metaverse backdoor codes. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. He'd been planning to activate the system within hours. The media coverage was instantaneous and harsh. Vanessa Dustin's exclusive ran in the New York Times, with additional coverage across every major platform. By noon, Congress was calling for hearings. By evening, Shoals Security stock had dropped 43%. Marcus watched it all unfold from his Los Angeles office, Natasha beside him. "It's almost too clean," she observed. "Catherine and Devon gift-wrapped and delivered, the rest of us untouched." "For now," Marcus said, "but this opens questions. Who's going to investigate how Catherine developed the backdoor in the first place? Who financed Devon's takeover attempt? The deeper anyone digs, the more they'll find connections to the rest of us. So we're not safe. We're safer than we were. That's the best we can hope for." He turned away from the screen showing Devon's perp walk. "How are you feeling about Devon's arrest?" Natasha considered the question honestly. "Satisfied. Upset that I ever trusted him. Relieved it's over." "It's not over for him. He'll be in prison for a long time." "Good." There was no mercy in her voice, and Marcus recognized that hardness. He'd put it there, through years of teaching her that business was warfare and mercy was weakness. For the first time, he wondered if he'd done her a disservice. In New York, Isabelle Dustin sat with her younger son David in a federal prosecutor's office. David had been granted immunity in exchange for testimony about his embezzlement and the larger financial crimes he'd witnessed. He'd avoid prison, but he'd lost everything else: his position in the company, his reputation, his family's trust. "I'm sorry, Mom," David said for the 100th time. "I know," Isabelle replied. She was exhausted, more tired than she'd been in decades. "I'm sorry too. I should have seen what was happening. I should have protected you better. From myself? From the pressure? From the expectation that you had to be someone you weren't." She reached across the table, taking his hand. "You're my son. That doesn't change, even if everything else does." David broke down then, the facade of control finally crumbling. Isabelle held him while he cried, and for the first time since her husband's death, she questioned whether building an empire had been worth the cost. Thomas found her an hour later in her office, staring at the Manhattan skyline. "The board wants to meet," he said. "They're concerned about the testimony I'm going to give." "Let them be concerned," Isabelle said. "You're doing the right thing." "Am I?" Thomas sank into a chair. "I'm going to implicate our own company in multiple crimes. I'm going to damage our reputation, possibly expose us to legal liability. All to satisfy Vanessa's moral crusade." "You're going to tell the truth," Isabelle corrected. "There's a difference, and yes, it'll be painful. But we've been operating in shadows for too long. Maybe it's time for some light." Thomas looked at his mother in surprise. "I never thought I'd hear you say that." "I never thought I'd mean it," she admitted. "But watching Julian manipulate all of us, watching Catherine and Devon plan something catastrophic, watching my own children turn against each other." She trailed off. "There has to be a better way to do business, a way that doesn't require sacrificing everything decent about ourselves. That's not how Dad taught us. Your father was brilliant and ruthless and died of a heart attack at 57 because he couldn't stop fighting long enough to live." Isabelle said sharply, "I don't want that for you. I don't want it for any of us." Rachel Shoals, meanwhile, was doing interviews. Vanessa had positioned her as the hero of the story, the family insider who'd exposed the plot, risked everything to do the right thing. It was good press, but it felt hollow. "How does it feel to be responsible for your family's downfall?" one reporter asked. "It feels necessary," Rachel answered carefully. "My mother and brother were planning something that could have devastated millions of people. Family loyalty doesn't extend to covering up terrorism, but your position to take over Shoals Security now. Some are calling this a calculated power play." Rachel had expected this question. Anyone who thinks destroying your family is a power play has never actually done it. This wasn't strategic. It was survival. For me, for the company, and for everyone who would have been hurt if I'd stayed silent. The interview went viral. By evening, Rachel was being hailed as a new kind of business leader, ethical, principled, willing to sacrifice personal relationships for the greater good. It felt like a lie, but Rachel had learned from her family that perception mattered more than truth. Chapter 8, Aftermath. 2 weeks after Catherine and Devin's arrest, the 4 remaining leaders met again at the Carlisle. The atmosphere was different this time, less antagonistic, more cautious. They'd survived by cooperating, and none of them were quite sure what came next. Shoals Security wants to maintain its independence, Rachel opened. But we'd be open to strategic partnerships with any of your companies, provided they're structured fairly. Hammond Industries is interested in your legitimate Metaverse platform, Natasha said. She'd been speaking for her father more frequently, being groomed for eventual succession. We could integrate cryptocurrency payments into the virtual economy. Dustin Media would want distribution rights. Thomas added, we can bring content and user base. And Clarion Computing can provide the infrastructure, Julian said quietly. They all looked at him. In the aftermath of the scandal, Julian had been conspicuously absent from public view. Rumors suggested he'd been questioned extensively by federal authorities about his role in developing Catherine's backdoor. I'm retiring, Julian announced, effective end of this quarter. Clarion Computing will be sold to a consortium of smaller tech companies. I'm dismantling the empire. The shock was palpable. Why? Marcus asked. Julian smiled tiredly. Because I won, and it turns out winning doesn't feel like I thought it would. I manipulated all of you, orchestrated the downfall of the Shoals family, positioned myself to control the digital economy, and in the process, I realized I'd become exactly the kind of monster I always despised. He looked at Isabelle. You were right, I'm going to die alone and miserable. But maybe if I stop now, I'll at least die honest. What will you do? Isabelle asked softly. Philanthropy, probably. Try to do some good with the fortune I built by doing harm. He stood, preparing to leave. For what it's worth, I'm sorry, to all of you. What I did was brilliant and terrible, and I regret both aspects equally. After he left, the remaining 4 sat in silence. Do we trust that? Thomas finally asked. It doesn't matter, Marcus said. Trustworthy or not, Julian's out of the game. That changes everything. So what do we do now? Rachel asked. Natasha pulled out a tablet displaying a proposed partnership agreement. We build something better. Not a monopoly like Julian wanted, but a genuine partnership. 4 companies, 4 specialties, working together instead of destroying each other. You really think that's possible? Thomas asked skeptically. I think the alternative is more of what we just survived, Natasha said. More betrayals, more crises, more narrow escapes. At some point, we have to decide whether we're going to keep playing the same destructive game or try something different. Isabelle studied the proposal, seeing the influence of her daughter Vanessa in the ethical guidelines, the transparency requirements, the profit-sharing structure that prioritized sustainability over maximum extraction. This is more than a partnership, she said. This is a complete restructuring of how we do business. Yes, Natasha agreed. Is that a problem? Isabelle thought about David in exile, Thomas preparing to testify against her, Vanessa, who barely spoke to her anymore. She thought about Julian's admission of emptiness, Catherine and Devin's upcoming trials, all the casualties of corporate warfare. No, she said slowly, it's not a problem. It's overdue. Marcus watched his daughter negotiate terms with Isabelle and Thomas, watched Rachel contribute ideas from her technical expertise, and felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Pride not in conquest, but in collaboration. There will still be competition, he warned them. Still conflicts of interest. We're not going to turn into one big happy family. We're not family, Rachel said firmly. We're partners. Family is obligation. Partnership is choice. Well said, Marcus replied. Isabelle murmured, They spent the next 3 hours hammering out details: distribution rights, profit splits, decision-making processes, conflict resolution. It was tedious and complex and nothing like the dramatic takeover attempts they were all used to. It felt like progress. Epilogue, new foundations. 6 months later, the partnership was official. The announcement made headlines. 4 conglomerates form unprecedented alliance. Hammond, Dustin, Scholes, and Clarion Computing create joint digital economy platform. Catherine Scholes had been sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for attempted economic terrorism. Devon received 12 years. Their testimony about Julian Clarion's role in developing the backdoor had led to additional investigations, but Julian's retirement and cooperation with authorities had kept him out of prison. Christopher Hammond had taken a position at a small startup in Austin. Far from his father's shadow, David Dustin was doing community service and writing a memoir about corporate corruption. Both were rebuilding their lives slowly, carefully. Vanessa Dustin won a Pulitzer Prize for her investigative series. She used her acceptance speech to call for stronger corporate accountability laws, citing the case as an example of how close the system had come to failing entirely. In San Francisco, Rachel Scholes addressed her first shareholders meeting as CEO of Scholes Security. "We're implementing new ethical guidelines," she announced. "Complete transparency in our security protocols, independent audits of our Metaverse platform, and a commitment to user privacy that goes beyond legal requirements. We'll be profitable, but we'll be principled." The shareholders, surprisingly, approved. The scandal had taught them that short-term profits from unethical practices weren't worth the long-term risk. In Los Angeles, Marcus and Natasha Hammond hosted a dinner for the partnership's leadership team. As they raised glasses to toast their new venture, Marcus felt an unfamiliar emotion: contentment. "To partnership," Natasha proposed. "May it be less exciting and more profitable than warfare." "To change," Thomas added, "and to not repeating our parents' mistakes." "To building something worth keeping," Rachel said. Isabelle, who'd been quiet throughout dinner, finally raised her glass. "To second chances, and to being brave enough to take them." They drank, and for a moment, the 4 families were aligned, not through manipulation or necessity, but through genuine choice. Outside, Los Angeles glittered with the lights of a city that never stopped moving, never stopped fighting, never stopped building. Inside, 4 leaders who'd spent their lives at war decided to try something harder than conflict. They decided to try cooperation. And in a hotel room across town, Julian Clarion watched the news coverage of the partnership announcement. He'd built his empire on exploitation and lost it to ethics. He'd been the smartest person in the room and ended up alone. But watching the 4 companies work together, building something sustainable instead of destructive, he felt something unexpected. Hope. Maybe there was time to change. Maybe there was still a chance to build something worth more than money, or power, or revenge. He picked up his phone and made a call. "Vanessa Dustin, this is Julian Clarion. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I have information about corporate corruption across the tech sector. 50 years worth of knowledge about how these companies operate, who's vulnerable, what needs to change. I'd like to help you expose it." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Why?" Vanessa finally asked. "Because I spent 50 years being the villain," Julian said. "I'd like to try being useful instead." "This isn't redemption," Vanessa warned. "Cooperation doesn't erase what you've done." "I know," Julian said, "but it's a start. And right now, a start is all I'm asking for." Another pause. Then, "Send me what you have. We'll talk." The call ended. Julian sat in his hotel room, looking out at the Los Angeles skyline, and for the first time in decades, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he'd made the right choice. The game wasn't over. The corporate wars would continue, in different forms and with different players. But the rules had changed. The old playbook of scorched earth competition was being replaced with something more complex. The difficult, unglamorous work of building sustainable success. It wasn't as dramatic as hostile takeovers or brilliant manipulations. But it was real, and in the end, reality mattered more than performance. The four families had learned that lesson the hard way. Now they'd have to prove they could remember it. To be continued in Part 7. Add to Conversation 1.
I love making these videos for you. If you liked this story, then please like, subscribe to my channel, and switch on the notifications for more entertaining stories. Please also leave a comment for any story suggestions.